Hey, everybody. Welcome
Hello.
to the episode of Mac Yak. We fired GT, so I will be hosting tonight. It was just getting way too damn messy. Way too messy. How are y'all doing?
Doing well. How about yourself?
Sweating. Sweating a lot. Just
I bet.
spent the last 10 minutes trying to make everything work and sit here pretending that I had it all figured out all along.
No, it was
But,
Jay's way of trying to
we're
tell
good.
us he really didn't want to host tonight, but he got
No. I'll host.
When in doubt, you must reboot.
It was Discord. Discord was hijacking my mic and my camera.
As it does.
As it
Really?
does.
That's weird.
Yep. I'm uninstalling Discord. Goodbye. Anyone been up to any stuff this week?
Work.
Apart from
Work.
open core installation?
Open core shenanigans.
Work.
3 of us got bitten by the open core bug, and it's
We
all
did indeed.
Jay's fault.
And 2 of us actually did it right.
Ooh.
I will be number 4.
Yay.
Are you going to live stream it?
No.
Come on.
Well, maybe. Since you told me it was so easy, I might just do it from here.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't live stream it because it all happened so fast.
Where's the fun in that? You have to screw things up.
No fun. No fun in that at all.
What am I drinking? Ginger beer.
Yeah.
Not sponsored.
He prefers to drink this, but he doesn't have any right now.
Not that flavor. I like the
It
peach
does
flavor.
OC.
All
Jay
right.
drinks the poison flavor.
You will
Ready
be
to
happy
explore
know
what's
my
on
cat-
the agenda?
Yes,
Let me
sir.
pull up the notes here.
Jay, you'll be happy to know my cat's trying to eat my magic mouse.
That's a good use for it.
It'll
You might
kill him.
actually pull it off. So we have one news item here that I haven't fully read up on, and I cannot currently put it in the comments because I'm not even on YouTube yet. But it's about Apple Pay Later. I think it was Brock that shared this on Discord. From what I can tell, it's just several payment plan options. And I was curious how y'all feel about that, because Apple hardware is generally a little bit expensive. So do we encourage this, or do we think that people that don't have enough money are going to try anyway and end up in massive debt, missing payments, or you think it's all going to work out? What do you think?
Well, I think the biggest question is, and I haven't read up on it yet, is it like interest free if you pay it all within a certain time period or
I
not?
doubt it. It's probably more like buy here, pay here, where they're going to charge you a ridiculous amount of interest.
Yeah, so the way a lot of these sorts of things work, because we do actually have these sorts of things out here in Australia, a lot of these buy now, pay later things. And to some extent, it's the same as the way some credit cards work. You know, you have a credit card, you can make a payment, you can buy something, and then you have a certain amount of time to pay the credit card off with an interest-free period. If you pay it within that time frame, you're not going to get any interest. Now, I don't know, but I imagine this is going to be the same sort of thing. You can get it, you can go in, you can buy it straight away, probably with some form of credit check, walk away with the item, and then you just have to, pay for it within a certain time frame, probably with regular payments. And my guess is that if you don't pay it within that time frame, they'll slug you with massive interest.
Yeah, it looks like from the article here that there's a few different options, and if you do one of them, you get interest-free payments, but you have to make that all up in 2 weeks. Otherwise, you will be hit with the interest and other monthly fees, I'm sure, and stuff like that. So yeah, it seems very similar, but I guess it's good to have another way to pay for these items. I mean, there's a reason why we're all sticking around to our decade-old Mac Pro towers. So this stuff ain't cheap, and it's good to have another option out there.
So Retro Techie asked, is this for U.S. customers only?
Well, why don't you read what the article said?
I
GT?
don't know. I didn't read it. That's why I asked if somebody, one of you guys read it.
Well, on the upside, I think they're trying to make some of their products more accessible to, lower class people like myself who don't have $5,000 to fork out on a computer.
All of us who can't afford a new Mac,
So-
basically.
Yeah.
No, unfortunately, these these programs that they do tend to take advantage of people like myself who are poor white trash and don't have a lot of money, and the interest rates are usually ridiculous.
Oh
But
yeah.
I don't know. I might look into it just to see what it is. I mean, there's nothing really. I mean, short of a new Mac Pro, there's not really anything I really want from Apple at the moment. So I mean, but I think I think in a way they're trying to make their products more accessible credit wise to people. Since you have to have like the most perfect credit to get an Apple card because it's backed by Goldman Sachs or something like that. So basically, if you don't have a 2,000 credit score, you're not getting an Apple card. So,
I don't see anything in the article where it says it's U.S. only, but it also links to a larger Bloomberg report, which I'm not going to bother with.
Yeah,
So.
I assume it's probably.
and I'm sure the credit limits are probably pretty low too. So you might be able to get a base model iMac.
The question is, will it allow me to buy a 2019 Mac Pro tomorrow?
Thanks, Justin.
Will your wife let you?
She's out of town at the moment. She won't know. Thank you, Justin. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you,
Thank you, Justin.
We are
Appreciate
now
that.
less bored.
Yes. I am one
Slightly
step
less
closer
for-
to that Mac Pro. Yeah.
We're $4.99 closer.
It's a baby step, but you're one step
Well,
closer.
$4.99 divided by 6 and StreamYard.
You can now pay
Streamlabs,
for
whatever.
the amount of money it costs to carry it out of the door.
That means you get 75
Sounds
cents.
about right.
So I've just jumped onto the Australian Apple website, and I'm just going through the motions here of buying myself a Mac Pro. I do it, quite regularly. I stopped just before the buy button, but I do it quite regularly. And it does say that there is a 0 interest for 6, 12, or 24 month option available with the purchase. So you can, obviously lock into, I guess, some sort of contract for a certain period of time with regular payments. With 0 interest, so obviously you're going to get interest if you breach terms of those repayments. But yeah, that's something that's available here in Australia.
Well, I mean,
or it'll
speaking of experience with that, because it happens in the company I work for, because we push that all the time, is that they offer the interest free, just like Bruce was saying, but technically you're actually accruing that interest on it. It's just not shown. And like Bruce just said, if it gets like to the 24th month and you haven't paid it all off, even if you have $5 left on it, okay, and you don't pay that $5 off in the 24th month, then guess what? Boom, all that interest for 24 months just piles up on
Yeah, you got to read those the laundry list of terms they give you
Yep.
when you sign up. Otherwise, you're in for a nasty surprise.
But-
I'm just surprised they're not going to throttle the performance of the machine if you miss payments.
Now, of course, having said all that, if you do work with these sorts of plans and you do make the payments when you're supposed to, these things can be fantastic. So
Oh yeah. Just like I think it was my iPad or my iPhone or whatever. It wasn't through Apple. It was through whatever company I bought it through. But it was one of those things where I had like 13 months or 12 months or something like that to pay it back. And it was like, okay, great. That's easier to swallow. And I think I got like a $5 rewards credit of some god-awful video streaming service I never ended up using. But it was like, okay, no interest. That's good.
So before we move on to the first topic, I believe Dana wants to sing Ben Happy Birthday, I believe you said.
I do not.
Oh, okay. Well, happy
you.
birthday anyway
Happy
then.
birthday to you.
Let's see.
You get one. It's either a text or a song.
So
He's already-
this
he already
is
sent the text.
this
My
is a topic
goodness,
that we may have-
Patrick.
Oh,
What
gosh.
happened?
Patrick.
Patrick.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Thank you, Patrick.
wow. Thank you.
Well, now we have to sing Patrick happy birthday.
You can buy the keyboard now.
Mac Pro keyboard payment.
Happy birthday, Patrick,
Yeah,
whenever it is.
I think that's what a Mac Pro keyboard costs.
Bruce is one step closer to joining us for in-person session one of these days.
Hey,
Yeah.
just think
Yeah.
that's 1/10 of what the display stand
Yeah,
costs.
right. Just the stand. Yeah.
I was thinking of just duct taping it to the wall. I'm okay. I don't need a stand.
Oh, thank you, Patrick.
Wow.
That's
Yes,
very.
thank
Much
Very
appreciated,
generous of you.
sir.
Yeah.
All right. The first topic is something we have discussed in the past in various ways, shapes, and forms, but we keep coming back to it because it's an interesting topic that you can attack from so many angles. We can talk about it every week and still not run out of stuff to say. But this is buying a secondhand Mac in now 2021. What is recommended? What to stay away from? Things to look out for. It's as we move on in years, every year seems to have a different Mac that is desirable. It kind of follows behind by 10 to 5 years. That's kind of the time frame people look in. So every year you run into different hardware flaws and stuff that was an issue with the machines that are now popular in the secondhand market. So we're going to share some ideas of what to look out for, what not to do, what to jump on the second you see it, and I'm sure Steve might have a few things to say about pricing when it comes to the vintage stuff. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Steve while I go grab some headphones and
Sure. So
let him promote his price guide.
Well, we're going to split this into two areas, I think. So first, we're going to talk about more of the more modern stuff that people actually, the non-insane people use on a daily basis. We're going to switch over to talking about some vintage stuff and what you should start out with. But I think it's very important to realize that it's pretty easy going into an Apple store now and you see their products of, okay, that's the MacBook, that's the iMac or whatever. But they've changed a few things in the past 5 years or so. There was that MacBook for a while that was just like this weird thin MacBook that had a very underclocked processor. Then they had the iMac Pro. There were hits and misses. But a good thing to do when you're thinking about buying a secondhand Mac, before you think about where you're going to buy and what you're going to do with it, well, you should think about what you're going to do with it, but you should think about your budget, and then you should look at a place like Mac Tracker or one of these websites that list out all the different models, Wikipedia, whatever, and start looking at what machine meets your needs. Think about the software you're going to run, the operating system you're going to run. Think about the disk. Do you need to update the SSD? Is it soldered on? Same goes for memory. Is that soldered on? You don't get much of a choice with the modern machines. So you have to think about that. You have to think about what you're going to be using the machine for and what it's suitable for. Desktop, laptop, iPad, whatever it is.
So I had one of the reasons why I sort of put this topic into it was mainly because I just wanted to make all you guys talk about it. But I recently had a situation where I wanted to get a Mac Mini. I was looking to run a server, and I wanted to get a little Mac Mini that I could tuck away. So I went in and I said to Jay, what Mac Mini do you recommend? And he said, look, get the 2012. So, okay, well, why specifically the 2012? Well, between 2011 and 2012, so the 2011 is USB 2, the 2012 is USB 3. So having USB 3 on the thing is a really good thing to have. So that's a good plus to have there. The other thing about it is the 2012 came out with an i7 version, which is quad core, sort of CPU, very powerful, and it also has upgradable RAM. I think you can take it up to 16 gigs or something like that. And so recommended 2012 Mac Mini. Great, no worries. So anyhow, I saw one come up on eBay with someone saying, I've got this Mini, I've opened it up and I tore one of the connectors off it, so I'm selling it for cheap. So I was like, well, no worries. I know I can solder that connector back on. So I bought it from him. I paid very little for it for this, 2012. It arrives. It's a 2014. Now, you might think, well, it's 2 years newer. Surely that's a good thing. No, because the 2014 model that I got was the absolutely stupid bottom rung of the ladder 1.4 gigahertz dual core i5 with soldered on 4 gigabytes of RAM, unupgradable. So you've got this situation where you might just automatically think, this is newer is better, but in actual fact, I ended up getting this pile of steaming hot garbage compared to sort of what I was actually aiming for. And this is the main reason why I kind of brought this in here, because throughout sort of Apple's design changes. For instance, some models with glued-in batteries versus batteries that could just come out with screws. Depending on what you're wanting to do with these things, sometimes a particular year might suit you better than another year, even if it's older.
Yeah, I think that's very well said, especially when you consider the amount of different revisions, and Apple doesn't really promote like the names of it. It's always like the year of the model. So looking at something like Mac Tracker or Wikipedia really helps you out as far as understanding what is USB 3 ports, what is USB 2 ports, and what's important to you.
Yep, indeed. And then, of course, there are some that have known ongoing technical problems. I mean, if you're looking to buy a model that has the butterfly keyboard, or if you're going to get one of those models that has screen delamination issues, ones with sort of known GPU failures, that sort of stuff.
What's wrong with the butterfly keyboard? It's fantastic.
Is it the butterfly? What's the other one? What's the bad one?
The butterfly keyboard. I've just mentioned it. It's pretty damn bad.
Give me an old Apple Extended 2 keyboard any day of the week.
Absolutely. Just try and cram that into a MacBook Pro.
It can be done to duct tape. Just don't close the screen.
I think that's the third time this episode, which we are now 18 minutes into, that duct tape is mentioned. People are getting a good idea of how we resolve issues at Mac Yak.
That's right. What is it? Yeah. If it's moving and it's not supposed to, duct tape. If it's not moving and it's supposed to, WD-40. That's all you need in your toolkit.
Nothing more to add to that.
Oh, and a hammer.
Yes, that's right. So can I just quickly answer Michael's workshop here? He just said if you were looking to build a Mac server in 2021, why not Hackintosh? The main reason for it is that I was very, very limited with space. And so I wanted to have a mini that would be tiny weeny and fit in the corner, which it does. It's just over there. I've actually got two of them stacked side by side in a little toaster style arrangement, and it works beautifully. So that's why I actually wanted a mini, because I wanted something nice and neat and tidy, and I also like the look of them. So.
Cool. Yeah, now, a thing to keep an eye out also is you probably won't get the best deal on eBay, but you'll get the best deal for one of these machines on secondhand places like Facebook Marketplace or OfferUp, places like that. Also on forums. I mean, obviously you have to be very careful if you're dealing with somebody online you don't know. They could be anybody. They could be a scammer or whatever. Just do your homework, but you might be able to get a better deal and save a good amount of money if you're dealing with somebody on like one of those Macintosh Facebook groups. There's pretty good protection there if like Facebook is hosting the listing. Same goes for PayPal. You can get some protection through there. Just be smart about it. And if the deal is too good to be true, I know it's tempting, but it probably is. So.
As a general rule, if you see polka dots, run.
Run!
Yeah, no shit.
Whether it be in the background or fixed to a poor iBook clamshell.
So, Jay, can I ask you, let's just say, for example, I was wanting to run Catalina on a laptop. What would be your top pick?
None.
Mid 2015, 15-inch. Yeah. It's,
you would go with the 2009 MacBook Pro 17-inch?
No. Unlike some people, no.
Well, unless you want to melt your pants off.
You don't want to see it melt down into a big brick of aluminum?
No.
I mean, obviously there are faster computers around that can run Catalina, but when it comes to price versus the amount of ports you get and performance and all that, 2015 15-inch Retina is pretty much the sweet spot still, I think.
And it still actually will natively run Big Sur as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's the other thing to think about, your software requirements, because we know with the upcoming releases, they're steering towards M1. And if, like Michael was saying, or whoever said in the chat, Michael's saying about a Hackintosh, there's going to be an end of the line there at some point. I mean, people are creative, maybe they'll get around it, but you just got to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I think this is the first time in my life using computers that I actually have to consider, like, hey, will this run the software I want to run. I've never run into the issue before where, OS is not supported. We had Collins patchers, DOS Dude 1 patchers. We had OpenCore after that. You never really had to worry about it. But now
Back in my day with my 68K Max.
Yeah, you had your floppies, and yeah, I know.
Yeah, but you also got to remember too, back in that day. I mean, I think what was it? Tiger was the first Intel Mac OS X.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's a lot of us that started out with something around Tiger area, right, or before. I mean, some of us started in OS 9. I know some of you guys
Started in OS
7, baby.
System 6, baby.
Yeah, I started in 6 as well.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So do you want to move on? Or
Yeah.
anybody else have anything to say?
I'm just staying out the way because I know you guys have a lot more to say about this than I do. But I'm ready to move on if you are.
Sure.
So next up, we have, and I'm definitely staying out of the way on this one. What is a good vintage Mac to buy for someone just starting out?
Oh boy. Well, Bruce. So I will start this off and let Bruce talk when he feels comfortable doing so. So there is a lot to consider when you're thinking about a vintage Mac. There are plenty of vintage Macs now. You could even consider the earliest Intel ones vintage Macs. But a 68K machine, a PowerPC machine, an Intel one, if you really want to go obscure, Lisa, Apple II, Apple III, etc. Now, a lot of similarities to this conversation. You have to think about what your intention is for this machine. If it's just to play games, nostalgic purposes, just fart around, there's plenty of machines that could do that, but you have to be aware of the software, what it's intended to run on. Does it run on a 68K Mac okay? Does that run on a PowerPC Mac okay as well? If it's a game, does it require 3D hardware? and as Mike is pointing out, don't buy a first generation Power Mac unless it's free. They're pretty good. But
I blow raspberries at that.
Yeah, I mean, the thing to say about any Mac, even the crummy old first generation Power Macs, they still work as a pretty good bridge machine. If you need to copy stuff over Ethernet and then sneaker net that over to a Mac Plus or something like that, those machines still have some use. The thing is that with a lot of these machines, they could be very similar in spec, and you want to check out the websites, Every Mac, Low End Mac, Wikipedia, stuff like that. Find out what the processor supports, how much memory it supports, what systems it supports. A lot of those Macs, especially if they were sold as LCs or Performas, some of them didn't have a math coprocessor, so they could get sluggish. You also have to think about disks and stuff like that. If the hard drive is bad, you have to get a modern replacement. These are all things to think about. I'm not saying this is the whole part of the topic, but I've seen way too many people buy something on eBay on a whim and then message me afterward and go, yeah, I got this iMac G3. I want to play, this game, but it runs too quick or it quits. And I'm like, yeah, that's game designed for a Macintosh Plus.
Yeah.
It's not really going to run well on that.
I just bought a Mac SE. How do I get on the internet?
Yeah. So there's quite a few hurdles you have to go over. Facebook isn't working. So yeah, that's just some preliminary things there. I know Bruce has some opinions of some of his favorite machines, and then we could, I guess, go on from there.
Yeah, well, I mean, I pretty much just follow on with what Steve said there, and that comes down to what it is you want to do with these things. So, if you're wanting to just get into the old, monochrome nostalgia, the little sort of 9-inch screen of the old compact Macs, I would probably recommend an SE as a good place to get started. SEs tend not to have a lot of the technical problems that you have with things like an SE30 or a Classic or a Classic 2 or Color Classic for that matter. So if you're really looking at the little original compact Macs, I think an SE you're probably likely to get for a better price than you might say get a Plus. It has ADB, so you don't really have issues with trying to track down a keyboard and a mouse. It has SCSI internally, so you can go in and connect up a SCSI to SD or a BlueSCSI to it. They've got generally pretty reliable power supplies. They don't have any surface mount electrolytic capacitors, and that's a really good starting point for the really early 68K. But you got to keep in mind that you're not going to be able to fire that up and play Doom on it or something like that. Then sort of as you then start moving into something faster, and this is where it comes to what you want to do. So, for instance, I have a big I've got a real nostalgic thing for some of those early Myst style games, the ones where you go around solving puzzles and stuff like that. And most of the ones that I have, they run on OS 9. So for those ones, I'm going to want to have myself a power PC like a G3 or a G4 or something like that to play those sorts of games, and they run really well. But yeah, it just depends on what it is that you want to do. When you get into a lot of the 68K Macs, you do need to consider that a lot of them do have surface mount electrolytic capacitors. So if you're buying them online, you are most probably going to get them with problems that are going to be resolved. So you do need to keep that in mind. There are some Macs that don't have those problems, things like the Quadra 700 and the Quadra 950, but they're typically very, very expensive. So, you have to find that balance. But yeah, look, same as Steve was saying, what is it that you want to do? Are you wanting to run a particular operating system, a particular game? Do you have a particular activity that you want to perform on this thing? And then that will help you decide what to get, sort of as a collector.
And I just want to follow up of what someone said in the chat about PowerBooks. Don't forget about the portables, because PowerBooks, iBooks, those are excellent machines. Most of them you could plug an external display into them. So if you get one that has a cracked LCD or the screen's screwed up, you can plug in an external display. Even some of the earlier PowerBooks that are black and white will drive a color display as long as they have the resources to do that. So don't discount that. Just make sure the battery's okay. Any of these machines, you want to see it operating in person. You want to look under the hood, make sure the battery hasn't exploded, etc.
That's right,
even some of the Performa machines, they're not the best machines, but if it's a starter computer, you're just getting into this hobby. I mean, most of the Performas aren't 100% bad. You do just have to be aware of what you're getting yourself into. They are the lower end ones. They are the lower cost ones, just like an LC. So if you get it for a song, that's great. But I wouldn't pay like $200 for one. That's a bit ridiculous.
Yeah,
the Performers are good.
They weren't worth that new.
What'd you say, Mike?
Performers are a good place to start. They're not horrible machines.
Yeah, as long as you're getting them, as Steve said, as long as you're getting them for a good price. So, but the laptops are an interesting thing, because when I started getting into collecting the second time around, I decided that I was just going to collect laptops because of space issues.
That's right.
Which I still haven't resolved, but now I've just got more things. But and so I have quite a few G3 laptops and that. But just with those, you do need to keep in mind that some of those laptops do also have capacitor leakage issues. As Steve mentioned there, sometimes when people have had those computers and they've put them away in a cupboard and they've been working, and all that time the battery's been discharged inside there, and then the battery starts leaking all its guts out inside the computer. And then someone goes in and sells it as, as is. You just need to be aware that is a common thing to happen, and also screen delamination. When if they're stored for long periods of time, the thing that holds the polarized sort of with lots of filter on the LCD screen, the adhesive that's used to stick that on can actually start oxidizing, and then they can get ripples that look like someone's scratched down the side of it. And fixing those is an absolute nightmare. So that's another thing to be aware of if you're wanting to collect laptops, or if you have collected laptops and you are storing them. So, but yeah, laptops are a great place if you haven't got a great thing to collect if you haven't got much storage space.
Question I have is that I really, really want a beige Mac, right? And I cannot find one locally, but I really want one. I'm desperate to have one.
Especially one of those Performa 550s with the built-in CRT?
Yeah, especially that one. So I finally find one. Some dude in Germany has one for sale on eBay. The price is right. Should I get it?
Not unless you want a pile of broken plastic on your doorstep.
Why? What's going on with plastic?
No.
What's wrong about plastic?
Dana, would you like to take this on?
Sure. And which I assume we're referring to something that I've talked about.
We're referring
previously.
to your many adventures of taking screenshots of horribly shipped computers and then crying in our mutual chat.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, they share them on Facebook all the time, too. It's like, especially those all-in-one LC models where the plastic will break if you look at it wrong. Like that machine back there, that plastic is pretty sturdy. Those were made well. The performance, what do you say? It was like 94 to 90?
Yeah, 93 to 95,
Okay, yeah,
96,
93.
something like that.
Yeah, somewhere in the mid-90s, if you get a computer, be very, very careful with it. Do not ship it if it has a CRT in it. Don't ship it from overseas. In fact, don't ship it at all. Look for something that's close because, it's very likely that the person shipping it, unless you confirm it with them, and they've done this before many, many times with no ill results, they're probably not going to know what they're doing otherwise, and so you're going to end up with a box of broken heart. When you open it.
And don't spend a lot of money on this stuff because it's probably going to require a lot of money going into it to get the darn thing to work.
Yes, that is true. Also, don't pay a lot of money for it because chances are you're going to deal with an exploded battery, which hopefully not, or leaking capacitors, and possibly you'll need to recap the analog board as well in some of these machines.
Or you have to send it to one of those expensive services. I think there's one in New Jersey, one in Australia. There's a few. Cost a fortune.
Expensive.
So, yeah.
If you look at the hours to service ratio, I think they're getting a bargain.
So the short answer to your question, Jay, is I would recommend that you hold off and wait until one of these beige Macs comes up for sale close to you.
Okay,
Buy
so just
local
stick with
and buy
the
cheap.
stick with the 2019 Mac Pro is what you're saying.
So there are some Macs that will ship okay. I mean, I know because I've had people send them to me. Some of those early compact Macs have still got pretty good plastics, and the CRTs aren't so heavy that they're going to actually smash destroy the computer from the inside. Things like the LC1, LC2, LC3, they're generally pretty robust. So there are Macs that I would take the chance with shipping, but yeah, definitely not those all-in-ones. The LC550, 575, 580, those ones definitely.
Yeah, the 5200 series, the G3 all-in-ones. You want to leave those where they are. It's hard to carry those, let alone ship those.
Yes.
And anything with the CRT, especially the iMac G3s, because a lot of people are getting into these. They were young when they came out. They're nostalgic for them. They're getting these iMac G3s. They're paying well over $100 for them. Then they're realizing the fault that a lot of us encountered. Oh, these CRTs got hot, and now their lifespan is pretty much extinguished. And finding parts to service those iMacs is getting more difficult because they have not made them in 20 years.
Here, I'm going to share a picture. So in case anybody is wondering.
Here we go.
There. That. Blow it up. That is the model we're talking about. Now, as you can see, there's a fairly large CRT in there. And when the ham-fisted idiots that work at our shipping distribution centers in 2021 get a hold of the box with this inside, that is the end of your purchase. Because that CRT is heavy and it will just break right through that shell, for lack of a better word, in shipping, like putting a rock inside of an egg. I mean, I have seen so many horror stories of those poor machines, and it's like, yes, they made tons and tons of them because they were big in the educational market. So a lot of schools had many of these, but we're going on 25 years almost that these things have been around. So many have broken. How many are left? I mean, we don't have any way to know.
Yeah,
So
it's very difficult to tell how many were actually
mitigate.
sold.
Right. Try to mitigate losing more of these by not having them shipped. If you find one close, go get it.
Can I just respond very quickly to something that Michael's Workshop has just said here?
He's being silly.
Just ship it upside down. It's interesting.
It doesn't matter.
If you are going to ship these, don't. We're telling you don't. But if you are going to ship these, in actual fact, the safest way to ship them is CRT down. Facing down. So it's I mean, they could, the box if they get mishandled by someone, they're still going to die. Doesn't matter what way around you put them. But in theory, assuming that the box is always going to remain in the same orientation as you packed it,
which is
if you ship them with the CRT down, they have a better chance of survival than any other way around.
So what I'm hearing is just don't ship.
Well, just try to find a local one if possible.
If it's heavy, if it's CRT, no shippy.
And I've seen suggestions where people say, take the CRT out and ship it separately. That is definitely an option. However, you still have, A, the added cost of 2 packages. B, you've got basically an empty shell sitting in a box. And if somebody, it could still break. But the chances of it happening are less.
I can virtually guarantee that the process of removing the CRT
that's the other
crack every screw hole.
That is the other thing. Yep.
I mean, those things are held in by sort of little metal brackets that have little, self-tapping plastic screws going into a plastic hole on the chassis. And the moment you put in a screwdriver and apply any sort of pressure to undo that screw, the screw hole is going to snap off from the actual case of the thing. That's virtually guaranteed. So
do I smell a CRT removal video in your future, Bruce?
Might. No, I mean, I can tell you, from experience, I was working on an LC 580, and I thought to myself, you know what? I might recap this power supply while I'm at it. So I went and pulled the back off, and started unscrewing it so I could get the analog board out. Crack, first screw, just fell apart. I was like, no, that's it. Back together. Leaving it. It works. I'm leaving it.
Now, I'm curious. You spent your time and your money tracking down these used Macs, whether they're Intel PowerPC or older, or the vintage ones that we just talked about. You finally have it at home. You picked it up, or it survived shipping, whatever. It's time to install a system on there and see what's what. Now, there are quite a few ways to install a system on a machine. And I believe Steve has a few ideas on that he's going to talk
Sure.
about.
Before we get to that, I want to ask real quick. I shared this. Ooh. This is the other all-in-one, and I really have not seen a lot of horror stories about these. Have you guys?
I had one shipped to me in the early 2000s from eBay. I don't know how, but it survived. I think it was also, there was a lot less shipping going on back then. There weren't as many online sales. So,
yeah. I'm sorry, Jay. I obliterated your smooth transaction.
That was an awesome segue. It was brilliant.
It was. It's a damn masterpiece.
I just thought of that, and I was like, well, what about the other all-in-ones? I haven't
now,
really
Jay,
seen
you
horror
feel
stories.
my pain.
So, since we were just talking about vintage stuff, I'll talk about the vintage stuff very, very quickly, and then we'll move on to the topic related, which is OS 10. But if you get any of these vintage machines, you're better off buying at least 2, because the more the merrier, and it's much easier to install an OS on one when you have one with a working OS, etc., etc. Mr. Fahrenheit in the chat makes an excellent point. That's one option. If you have a zip drive, that's a SCSI-based zip drive, those are great. There are USB counterparts, IDE counterparts that you could install in your more modern Macs, transfer files over, etc. I know Sean from Action Retro does that a lot. I've been doing that for ages. It's a fantastic way to transfer files around that are too big to fit on a 1.4 meg floppy disk. Now, if you do have a vintage Mac, just be aware the very early ones are 400K, 800K drives. You need, in most cases, an Apple SuperDrive floppy disk drive to write those disk images for those original Macs, and you sometimes need very specific versions of System 7, especially if you're dealing with 400K disk drives. Now, getting on to more modern stuff, if you're System 7 or 8, if your computer has a CD-ROM drive, your best bet is probably going to Macintosh Garden, looking up the Apple Software Legacy Restore Disk, or whatever it's called. That's one disk that has everything from the first version of the macOS all the way up to 8 or 8.1. And that's a great tool. It's a bootable disk. You boot it up, you erase the hard drive, you're all good to go. As far as 9, 8.6, 8.5, those systems, depending on the Power Mac you have, you might have to go get a special CD. But if you have a full install of 8.6 or something like that, that should work fine. Just boot it off of that. As far as getting into the OS X area, this is where people seem to have a bit of a problem with, because they assume if a Mac has a USB port, well, you can just boot it off of a flash drive. And that's really not the case. I mean, there are some open firmware hacks. You could get really nitty-gritty into the details and try to boot some of these earlier Macs that have a USB port, these PowerPC ones, into an operating system. And that simply is not possible with a lot of those machines. You can hack them sometimes, but
Steve,
it's simply not possible.
there. Can you answer that one?
I'm getting to it. So, the thing is with... I lost my train of thought. The thing is with those Macs of a certain age, if they do not have the ability to boot off a USB, you have to boot from an optical drive. And that has to be the one built into the machine. You can't connect one via USB. What some people do to get around that is they take the hard drive out, put it in an enclosure, install the OS using a similar Mac that has, an extra drive connector on it or something like that. So if you're trying to install a tray-loading iMac, has USB, the CD-ROM is shot, you have an IDE hard drive in there, well, put that IDE hard drive in a FireWire enclosure, plug it into a Mac Mini or something, do the OS install there. Or if you have an image of the pre-installed version of the OS, just drag the files over. Mac OS, it's nothing too fancy. You could just drag a system folder over. 9 times out of 10, as long as it's blessed, it should boot up fine. As far as creating bootable installers, there's a few different ways to go about this. Especially in the OS X era, as I was saying, there are some requirements with these operating systems that it's a little finicky. You can sometimes trick a newer OS to go on an older machine. And you could do that with the hard drive trick I just mentioned, putting that target computer's disk in a modern machine or a more modern machine, installing the OS and just swapping it out. That's how you could get Tiger on some of those earlier G3 machines. But as far as getting a bootable installer created, well, you could burn a disk. So if you have a CD burner or DVD burner, depending on the version of OS X, you could get a disk, you could burn it that way. Or you could use a FireWire external hard drive. Those are excellent tools to have. You could get a little FireWire case. You could put an SSD in the drive bay, whatever that case will accommodate, IDE or SATA on the newer ones. And most Macs with a FireWire port will boot off of that without a problem. And they'll be very happy to do so. You could make a FireWire disk with multiple partitions, as long as you are staying true to the generation of the machine you're installing to. So if it's PowerPC stuff, make sure the partition map on that external hard drive is Apple partition formatted, Apple partition map or whatever they call it. And if it's Intel, it has to be GUID. Otherwise, it's just not going to boot correctly.
Yeah.
And those are just some things. I'm not going to hog the entire topic.
How about the question?
I think you're doing just fine.
Well,
Okay.
I was just in the process of typing a response to Colonial Puppet, so I'll answer this now in speakage. So there is actually a really good, if you have a look, I think it is on with the BlueSCSI. Now I know you're talking about SCSI to SD there, but with the BlueSCSI website, I'm pretty sure that they have a downloadable disk image. I'm not sure if it's 7.1 or 7.5 that's already got a system on it and stuff like that. So it's something worth considering there. I actually have a disk image, but I haven't made it available for download yet. If you're talking about compact Macs, so if we're talking about, depending on the era of the compact Mac, if you're talking about SE or a Plus or a Classic, I would recommend System 7.0. With SE30 or Classic 2, I think 7.1 is the way to go for those. But yeah, in terms of disk images, there are a few floating around, just kind of like universal install things, but it does depend on which compact Mac you're going to use. This is actually something I wanted to just mention when it comes to the old SCSI Macs. When I used to work in sort of tech, Mac tech support back in like 93 or something like that, I used to carry around one of these. It didn't have my fancy logo on the front, but this is basically a SCSI, external SCSI hard drive. And this is actually an old spinner inside here, not a modern emulator. And on this, I would have installers for pretty much every system of all the computers that I used to work on. So I would have System 6 installers, System 7.0, 7.0, 7.1, 7.5. You know, I would just have all of the installers on this. And then I would have a kind of a universal operating system running on it, which for the vintage of computers I generally work with, 7.1 is probably the most versatile. And I would plug this into the computer and I would boot off this. And then that gives me the ability to go in and do whatever I need to do. I would have formatters on it. I would have SCSI probe on it. So once I boot from this, I've got full control over everything. I can go in and format the internal hard drive. I can install a system and then take it away. Now, of course, this now has been replaced with a SCSI to SD version 5.5, which is a little external SCSI hard drive emulator that I use for doing the same thing. But I would highly recommend for anyone who is getting into the vintage Mac collecting to get an external SCSI device, you know, and and have an operating system on it so that you can boot to that external device if you have anything wrong going on with the internal hard drive, or if you get hold of a new computer. I mean, if I buy a new vintage Mac, first thing I do is I just, you know, boot it up off that, you know, the external. I might have a look and see if it came with any drivers or something that might be people are looking for, then erase the hard drive, put a new operating system on it, and it just makes the process really, really easy. One of the questions that people often ask is when they get a new vintage Mac is it's like, okay, I've got this Mac and I've got a flashing question mark. What do I do now? And of course, that in itself there's a very, very long answer to that question, which I'm not going to go into now. But you know, you do need to sort of be armed with some tools in order to get those Macs up and running again with an operating system.
All right, cool.
One works with 68K and PowerPC Macs universally. No, there is not, because I think by the time PowerPC came out, it's 7.6, I think. Would that be right?
You had the first generation of PowerPCs ran 7.1, 7.1.2, I think. Okay. But then you get into the fun world of enablers. So, you know, there are universal installers, like the link in the chat for that Apple Legacy CD. There is a universal installer. You might be able to get around, let's say, booting the first generation 6100, 7100, 8100 Power Macs with one, you know, USB, I'm sorry, not USB, but SD card solution for your SCSI Mac. There might be a bit more of that. I don't know. I haven't really had to do that recently. I just usually put in the CD and have it do a fresh install. So that's just something to think about. But you can get very tricky with those enablers.
We're giving people full body shivers when they recall the enablers.
There is a resource somewhere on the interwebs. If I find it, I'll put it in the description, where there is a description of every single enabler and which computer it works with. So now on my sort of multi-boot installer thing here, I have pretty much every enabler in that system folder. Some of them do conflict with certain computers, so I can't have all of them in place. But I've stripped out the ones that cause me problems. Now, of course, they will then cause problems on the computers that need those enablers. Yep. But again, as much as possible, I'm trying to make it as universal as I can. But yeah, there is a website that goes in and lists all of the enablers and which computers they were all designed to work with.
And I just linked to that page on Macintosh Garden. They have a pretty good list. There are 2 downloads. So the second download is a specific enabler. The third download is another specific enabler. So you just make sure you look at the list and see what you need. Depending on the version of the operating system, you know, sometimes it didn't need that stuff. So just be aware of that. It's all fun. But getting back to the macOS 10 installers, just want to mention a few things before I forget. Using a FireWire external hard drive is very similar to the same concept of using a flash drive. You just got to think about it that way. It's a disk that's connected externally, but these Macs have built-in abilities to boot from FireWire, so that's very important. NetBoot is something Jay's going to talk about in a little bit, but I think what's also important to mention is if you have 2 Macs, you could actually, if it supports it, if that target Mac that you want to install OS on supports target disk mode, what you could do is take one FireWire cable, link them between both machines, your semi-modern Mac and let's say one that's a few years younger than it, and you could actually have that Target Mac's hard drive appear on your desktop just like an external hard drive. So you turn that, let's say it's an iMac DV that has a FireWire port in it, you're turning that iMac into an external hard drive. And that makes it very easy from, let's say, a PowerBook or whatever with FireWire port to do an installation of macOS 9, macOS 10, transfer files, format the hard drive. Very, very, very useful tool.
I miss
Let's face
Target
it,
disk mode.
Oh, totally. Once they took FireWire away, they took
Yeah.
away one of the best features that Macs have ever had. That was just such an awesome thing to be able to do.
Yeah, and it does stem
still
from...
use FireWire today. Even on Macs that don't have it, I have the little Lightning to FireWire adapter because I refuse to stop using it. But it's awesome.
Yeah, and Mr. Fahrenheit brings up another point because the target disk mode that FireWire has is sort of the cousin of the SCSI disk mode, and it was SCSI dock mode or whatever Apple called it at the time. But essentially, with those old PowerBooks, what you could do was the same thing: plug in a special SCSI cable that you jump the 2 pins on. Usually, a lot of these adapters have a little switch on it, and it turns the PowerBook into an external hard drive for any of your SCSI connected desktops. And the idea was you could do system installs that way. These PowerBooks didn't have CD drives, so that was how you would restore them and everything.
It's also important to remember that not all PowerPC Macs capable of running OS 10 can boot from a USB flash drive.
This is true.
The Blue and White G3 cannot.
Yes, that's right.
The early G4s,
I don't think the
model was it?
I don't think the
I thought
iMac G3s can either.
No, the iMac G3s
Can-
can't. Some of the iBooks you could do firmware modifications with, but I tend to stay away from that because when you're trying to instruct somebody of how to boot something from an external device, you don't want to have to instruct them and have it go into open firmware and type in a bunch of gobbledygook.
Right.
Yeah, because even the Power Mac the PowerBook G4s were a pain to boot from USB
Yeah.
because you had to use open firmware to do it.
No PowerPC Mac can boot natively from a USB device.
Correct.
Yeah,
Without going into open firmware. There's no way around it.
I thought that some of the G4s could.
No.
yeah. So it first
There are
became
no
a feature in
Power-
Intel, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Okay.
something that came through with Intel because of it had to do with the open firmware. It was a limitation of the open firmware at the PowerPC, which when they switched to Intel and the EFI, then that made booting from USB viable.
Yeah, and you needed that for a MacBook Air, which only had USB.
Yeah.
Isn't it true that the Blue and White G3 will not boot from a FireWire drive?
It will.
No, it will. You just
Yeah.
What am I
sometimes
thinking of then? Because there was one where if you plugged a drive into the regular ports, what am I thinking of?
well, you also have to be aware of firmware because there are firmware updates that are done. A lot of the PowerPC machines, the early ones, had a lot of firmware updates. A lot of them fixed issues like that. So
Yeah.
That's where we need Grudy. He would know which models do.
Well, the thing with the Blue and Whites is they had a lot of issues with hard drive limits. So if you would plug in like a FireWire hard drive or something, the computer wouldn't recognize it because the IDE or because the disk controller was just
Yeah. The
crap.
revision A was an asshole.
Yeah, and it wasn't limited to just the IDE. It also affected FireWire too to an extent.
Yeah.
So that's why a lot of those were probably having issues with booting from FireWire devices. So because those hard drives were bigger than the computer could physically understand.
oh yeah, I'm reading that the Blue and White G3 and the Yikes G4 have a very weird implementation of FireWire because it's basically an add-on board. It's not integrated into the logic board, so that's why they cannot do FireWire target disk mode. According to some of the things
That's
I've
what
read
I'm
there.
thinking of then, because mine won't do it.
Yeah, I think,
Mine's
and
a
you could
revision A.
do FireWire networking if you have OS 10. You could plug a FireWire cable and it just acts like Ethernet, but you gotta be booted up first.
Yeah, mine's a revision
Gentlemen,
A,
I
so
hate to
it's-
I hate to cut you off, and I'm sorry, but we gotta move on.
No,
I will be talking about
your booting.
About NetBoot some other day.
Yes.
Might actually, once I finish the project I'm working on, I might actually do a little segment on that.
And all your loving, happy times spent doing it.
Oh yes, yes. I have so many more gray hairs this week than I did last week. It's amazing.
Is that project going to be finished by this weekend?
I doubt it. I doubt it. Now I want to take a little break from the topics and see if anyone wants to play some Eep Quack with me.
Yay! We need a
So,
theme song for you.
GT is going to explain how this game works.
No, you're the host. You explain it.
I'm not going to explain it. If you don't know how it works by now, shame on you. So,
Go watch
the
all the
first
episodes.
one. Yep, go watch the first 127. You'll get the gist of it. Do we have banners for this or not really?
We will in a second.
Okay,
Eep if you have, quack if you didn't. That's all you got to say.
there you go.
All right.
So this topic, as we were putting the show together, I thought of this one. Who has actually used a PowerPC or 68K Mac this week for something productive?
Eep.
Or
Not this week.
What do you consider productive now? That's the
Not just
question.
farting about.
Yeah.
Getting something done.
Quack. I was
Quack.
definitely farting about.
What if
Eep for me.
trying to get a Power Mac G4 running?
I
Right.
thought about being productive.
That doesn't count. No.
What did you say, GT?
Well, I was trying to get a Power Mac G4 running yesterday and the day before, so
That's
using
productive.
a SD to IDE adapter.
An attempt was made.
No, it actually worked.
That's
It actually
productive.
worked. It
Yeah,
just
that's
took
productive.
me-
That counts. That counts. You can use
I used my Quadrant
so
800 to print out some invoices on my machine. So there you go. Eep.
So
Yeah.
I'll eat also.
I have
For
not
me,
really-
I've been working with G4s to get some net install images created.
I don't see a lot of eeps or quacks in the chat here. What is
Yeah,
up with
Yeah, there's a few. There's mostly
There's like-
quacks.
I
Mostly quacks.
see.
the Colonial Puppet, it was 68K or PowerPC. If
Yeah,
you've used
either or.
either of those in the last week to do something productive.
Playing a game is productive.
No, it's
Oh,
not.
is it? That's farting about. Well, if games are allowed, then I can definitely eat it. But if games are not allowed, then I've got to quack it.
I mean, you're de-stressing. Come on. There you go.
Now, the next one I have is did
Let's
you
see.
ever find the deal of the decade only to miss out on it at the last minute?
Eep.
Try to keep your stories to about a few minutes.
Yeah.
Dana?
I'm trying to think.
10 seconds or less.
Okay, Dana, you do it.
Yeah, so last week we were talking about that really nice 2GS system that was for sale on the Facebook Marketplace there. Thing was mint. I mean, if anybody didn't see that, it was a 2GS system with a monitor, keyboard, mouse. It had the 2GS system saver, which you can't. I mean, nobody sells those anymore. And if you find it, they're several $100s just for that. And a boxed image writer too, and then the original boxes for everything, the disk drives, the computer, the monitor, everything. And they looked like somebody had just bought them yesterday from the factory. I don't know how they kept them in such good shape for so long, but they wanted a really, really good price for it. And I said, sure. And I messaged the seller, and they said, well, we're going away this weekend. We'll get back with you on Monday to arrange pickup. And it was local, 20 minutes from my house. So we did that, and we set up the pickup date. And then late that night, the night before, they messaged me back and said, I hope you understand, but the buyer has decided to keep this computer for sentimental reasons, and we will be taking the sale down. Now, yeah, exactly, BS, because the more I think about it, people being people, especially these days, the sellers probably got told what that system was actually worth and said, oh, well, we could sell it for that.
Oh, so
somebody
start
else.
looking for Goldman to sell that. See, I'm wondering
No,
if that's-
see, I don't think he doesn't deal in like old, Apple IIs and things like that. Maybe they're accessories and stuff, but he doesn't usually. That's not his usual fare. His system.
And
I
he
don't
offers
know.
peanuts as well.
But
Can I offer a quick tip for the viewers? regarding scenarios
Just a
like
tip.
this. When I find something on eBay or Marketplace or whatever that I really want, and I don't want someone else to snatch it up because, as you hear, it happens. I will often negotiate with the seller and say, "Hey, if I shoot you $50 over PayPal now, can you take the listing down?" That's kind of my way of reserving it until we can do the final transaction. And more often than not, they're more than happy to do so.
I will do that next time.
Yep.
Because I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure somebody messaged them and said, "Hey, you're selling this for peanuts. You could get 4 times that."
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and it's one of those things where you,
Oh, well.
you just have to have your eyes out. It
Yeah.
stinks,
I
but
mean that's one of those deals that it's the find of the year, or
yeah.
5 years.
Well, and as
But,
Mr. Fahrenheit said, he missed out on a brand new sealed copy of Apple AUX 2.0 on eBay. Of course, there's the sniping that we're all familiar with.
Ugh, yeah.
And what really sucks with eBay is, well, aside from just about everything else, the auto snipers. Like there are bots that go on there and will bid
Well,
up something at the last minute.
In defense of Mr. Fahrenheit, though, I don't think that was actually a snipe because it was a buy it now. Somebody just managed to click the buy it now button before he did.
And that's actually where there are bots for that as well, and that is that people are doing constant searches for a particular item, and the moment that item comes up, they get a notification, and that means that as soon as something gets listed on eBay, they just pounce on it if it's a cheap one.
Yeah.
And so you don't even get an opportunity to see it because it's just it comes up and gets bought straight away.
One of these sellers, I was interested in bidding on an item, but they had it for way too high, and for a buy it now price. And I said, I'm not going to do that. And they said, oh, well, if you sign up for this auto sniping tool and use my username, you get a free 3 snipes. And I'm like, that's terrible. No, I mean, I know everybody else does it, but that's just stupid. I mean, I'll sit there and I'll bid, and at the last minute or so, I'll bid the highest amount I'm willing to go. And if I get outbid, well, maybe I bumped it up so the other person gets a little regret in their life. Huh?
There's whenever you're dealing with sort of eBay auctions, one of the most important things to do is make a decision prior to any bidding. What are you prepared to pay for it? Don't get caught up in an extra $5, an extra $5, an extra $5, an extra $10. Don't get caught up in that. Make your mind up. What am I prepared to pay? At what point do I decide this is not worth it?
Yep.
And let's just say the item is, your absolute limit is $150. If it sells for $151, you can walk away. You know what? That's too expensive. So if you can make that decision, and then sort of then if you do go in and snipe at the last second and put down 150 as your maximum, if you miss out, no regrets. You decided 150 was as much as you were prepared to pay. If you were thinking to yourself, you know what, 155 would have been okay, then bid 155 at the beginning. When you come in and do that snipe, come in with your maximum.
Yeah.
As most of us that missed out on something were either sniped or screwed over. My next Eep Quack kind of plays into that, and I'm putting it in the chat as well. Eep or Quack, be honest. Have you ever screwed over a confirmed buyer as a seller because you got a higher offer?
You put it in the wrong chat, by the way.
Quack.
Eep.
Quack.
Really?
Yeah, you played.
Did you mean our chat or did you mean the live chat?
Either one.
Yeah, so I had some stuff my dad was cleaning out of his attic when they were moving, and it was an old record player, and he really didn't care for it anymore. And this was like the third one he pulled out of the attic. So I listed like 1 or 2 on Facebook Marketplace, and they sold relatively quickly. And there was this old one that was a very unique one, but my dad really only wanted like $40, $50 for it. I posted it, got a lot of attention for it. And I was arranging it with the guy who was being kind of weird. He wanted me to drive to him, and I'm like, no, you're going to come pick it up. That's how this works. And then it turns out that somebody messages me and says, I want that. I will pay you 3 times what you're asking for it. And I said, oh, okay. And I went to the other guy and I said, look, I got an offer for this much. Are you willing to match that? He's like, no, but you agreed to me. Sorry.
If you put or best offer.
And that's what I did. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you could be talking to somebody for a week and then they're the high bidder. And then all of a sudden something comes in where somebody offers you twice as much. And you're like, look, or best offer. Another best
if you've
offer
been
came
talking
in.
with someone for a week and then you decide
That's-
no,
that-
well,
that
yeah,
makes you
this
a
was-
if they're him hawing about for a week and then you
This
get
was
a better
over-
offer,
This
take
was
the better
over a
offer.
conversation of 15, 20 minutes. I posted it, got a lot of attention to it.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, what's going on here? And it was listed for maybe $40 or $50. The guy offered me $200. And I'm like, okay, you can pick it up tomorrow.
I have a quick ethical question for you, Steve.
Yes, sir.
What if that first person who's agreed to pay $50 has actually hopped in his car and is on his way to your place?
I didn't tell him
and
where I
then
was.
you get the offer.
I didn't
But
tell him where I was.
imagine you'd got that far.
If it was that far, I would just sell it at that price. Because you never know if the person who offered you more, if they're going to be like, yeah, well, actually, now I'm seeing it in person. Yeah, some scuffs here. Blah, blah, blah. Then you just burn that bridge. I'm not, if it's a huge price difference, like it was, $40 to $200 is a big price difference. I was like, you know what? And the guy gave me crap for it. I just blocked him because who needs that in their life? But if it's a small amount, I'm not going to go through the trouble. I already made an agreement with somebody; they're buying it.
So you're obviously ruthless, but Action Retro
And it's been turned and bitten me before.
Unless they're at your house to pick it up when you accept the other offer, then you're in the clear. What if someone is already on their way to you? Like, it's a 1 hour
Then
drive.
no.
They're on their way.
No.
You get an offer that's double.
I
Then
tell you,
no,
if I
it's on
turned
the
up
way.
at the house and found out that between when I left my house and when I arrived, the seller had taken a different offer,
Oh.
there would be an altercation.
Yeah, I mean, so the general rule is don't be a dick.
Yeah.
How did this SCSI cable get lodged in the person's esophagus?
Well, here's another one too. Michael's workshop also says the best is where the seller fakes a better offer and you decline, and then they come back to you
Yeah.
Yeah.
because they're looking for you to up your bid.
that happened to me.
Yeah.
I got a good deal.
At the risk of any of them watching, my previous employer sells stuff on Facebook as well. So I was browsing last night, and I'm always looking for a certain type of logic board so I can fix it up and sell it because they're very well sought after, and I can get some good money for it. They sold a busted up Mac. Screen was cracked, keyboard destroyed, corners bent, but the board in it was exactly the board I was after. So I made an offer for $30, and they agreed. And then today, someone probably went through the logs like, oh, why is Jay buying this? That probably means it can be fixed and it's worth way more than he bid for it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they know that I am after those deals, so they probably like, oh man, we could have.
So they pulled it.
$200 for this.
That's why you need to get another persona and like a fake persona out there.
I have a hard enough time managing the one or two that I already have.
That was a good Eep quack though.
Yeah, and that's the Eep and Quack for this week. We'll save up some more for next week. Now, Bruce,
Hello.
about the starting your own YouTube channel. Is that something you want to take on now, or are you still collecting your thoughts?
Well, I'm looking for the contribution of others with this one as well. So
Sure.
I won't fly it completely solo. But so we're not doing any more of the other topics. We're going to put them.
We can if time allows, but I definitely want to get yours in.
Okay.
So.
Okay. All right. No problem. So, just to follow up on what we were talking about last week, and we basically started this topic because we know that there are quite a few people that do watch our show that have their own YouTube channels, or people that might be thinking about setting up their own YouTube channels. And so we thought, well, we might just start an ongoing series of things to keep in mind about starting your own YouTube channel. Last week we covered, what is it? What are your goals? What are your motivations? What are you expecting to get out of YouTubing? So that was what we sort of led with last time. And this week we're going to be looking at equipment. We're going to be looking at what the sorts of things you need to buy in order to get started. And so I thought we'd basically just go through some of the essential items and then, and we can all just sort of discuss them and talk about the pros and cons and all that sort of stuff. So I think probably where we need to start is probably with a camera, because YouTube is very much a visual medium. So I think a camera is an essential item. And depending on what it is you're wanting to do, you're planning to do, that'll depend on what sort of camera that you want to buy. Now, keeping in mind, of course, that there are different resolutions that you can record your stuff in. I guess the highest I think that YouTube will do is 4K. Correct me if I'm wrong with that one, but I wouldn't necessarily say that 4K is an essential thing if you're wanting to do YouTube, but I would say that 1080p is probably about where you'd want to start. So if you're going to be getting a camera, I would say you wouldn't want to get anything with a resolution lower than 1080p, and that refers to the number of pixels, vertical pixels.
But I have like 10 eyesight cameras. Can I use that?
Stagger them. You get like a fly view.
Yeah.
Now, if you were doing something like I'm doing now, just imagine that I am doing a YouTube channel where I'm just going to sit here and talk about all the worries of the world, and I'm going to stare at the camera while I'm doing it. You can quite happily get by with a webcam. I'm using a Logitech C922. These are give you a nice sharp picture. I've been very happy with this one here, and if that's what you're planning to do, you'll be able to get away with something like that. If you're planning to do a little bit more, you might need to go and get yourself more of a a better camera. You could look into getting a digital SLR. A lot of them will do video these days, but one thing you do need to keep in mind is some of those digital SLRs, mine is one of these. I have a Canon something or other. I can't remember what model it is. Never mind. The point about it is it shoots beautiful video, but because it's a digital SLR, it's designed to focus before you take a picture. And so when I set it up for recording video, it does the focus and the lighting adjustments, and then you start recording. If for some reason that focus needs to change midway through recording, the camera doesn't do a particularly good job of it. It really upsets the picture when it goes in and refocuses or redoes the lighting adjustment. So that's all fine if you're wanting to just record someone who's sitting at a table talking like I am at the moment. But if you're wanting to actually film something that might be moving, or you're wanting that focus to be able to adapt while you're actually filming, you might be better off going with an actual video camera. There is, of course, your phone. I mean, a lot of the phones these days have very, very good cameras. But if you're going to be sort of pre-recording some stuff, I would recommend maybe looking into some software like something like Film. I think it's called Filmic Pro. It does cost money, but it unlocks a lot of customizable options when you're filming stuff that you can get some very, let's say cinematic looking sort of footage when you're recording. So you could get by with a a phone to do filming in this day and age. I mean, I'm not talking about a 3G. I'm talking about like a reasonably modern sort of phone that has has high resolution capability. Steve, did you want to add anything camera based?
Sure. So I started out with just my phone, and Sean is in the chat is saying he started out with just his phone. Use what you got. You don't have to break the bank to start playing around with things. As you develop your skills and you understand what you want and need more, you could go down different avenues, but a webcam, an iPhone, smartphone, good place to just start out. Also, things to consider. Camcorders are sort of not fashionable these days. A lot of people are using their phones, so you might be able to pick up a pretty decent 1080p camcorder with a pretty sizable zoom on it for not a lot of money, because a lot of people are saying, well, what do I need this anymore for? I have my phone or whatever, and people are getting rid of them. Now, the same thing that Bruce mentioned for DSLRs is very true for modern DSLRs, unless you look at the specifications of them. A lot of them do what I think it's called like live video focusing or adjustments. You have to be sure that does that. Otherwise, you're going to spend a lot of money on the camera body and the glass, and then you'll be disappointed in it. You also want to be aware of, I know we're just talking about cameras, but lighting plays a lot into that. So if you don't have the proper lighting, listen, I use these cheap, basement LED strip lights, and they work okay. But if you really want to put light on a subject, this is set to a very dim level. A good set of these lights will run you between $150 and $200. You could get smaller ones for under $100, but these put out a heck of a lot of light. and Sean recommended them to me, so I appreciate the recommendation on there. But the thing about your video is, especially if you're zooming in, or especially if you're in certain situations, the more light you have, your footage is going to look a lot better, and it really takes the difference from an okay looking video to a wow, that's a great looking video, and your focus will be better because the camera's not struggling as much. So,
And I'll quickly mention something here. I'm going to stand up and show this because I've got a light here. I'm going to try and do this without actually knocking things over, so bear with me. But this is the light that I have. It's quite an old one, but one of the things that it has, which is very important, well, I think is very important when you're setting up to do lighting, is it has a big diffusion here. So they've got the light source inside, and then it has this diffusion material on the outside, which makes the light a lot softer. It doesn't look very soft when I'm this close to it, but what it does do is it means that it's not going to like really shine and you produce really harsh shadows across your face, where you get like very definite lines. So I would highly recommend for anyone who is wanting to do some of that lighting is to get something to diffuse the light. You can do it with an old shirt. You can do it, with whatever. But to get that light more diffused so that it just has more of an overall look on your face rather than putting harsh shadows on your face. Yep. Another thing I should really quickly mention, just piggybacking onto cameras, is a tripod. Really, really important to have something to set that camera up, be able to change the position.
I do want to say it.
Be able to change the position of it, sort of hold it steady. If you are planning to record footage where you want to move the camera around, if you get a still camera tripod, you are never going to be able to get smooth motion of that camera moving around when you're filming stuff. There are specific video tripods, and they can be bought quite cheaply on eBay. They're not necessarily the greatest quality, but they're ones that have a kind of like a soft movement to them. They've got the head on them will actually travel like it's got kind of like a clutch inside it, and so when you move the head around, they move very, very smoothly.
Yeah, very fluid.
Fluid's a bloody good word.
It's probably a gyroscopes inside.
Well, there is also a gimbal. That's if you're going to be planning to do stuff where you maybe want to walk around. If you're thinking of actually, you're going to be, I don't know, walking the streets, maybe getting a bit of a, vox pop, sort of talking to people, or if you're, I don't know, on holidays or whatever the case may be, you may then want to go with a gimbal. I've actually got one here. This is a gimbal here, and you can basically just put your phone into this, and when you switch it on, it will actually hold this in a set position. And you can just move around, and it just stays incredibly smooth and fluid. Now, this is one designed just for a phone, but you can actually get ones that are big enough to put a digital SLR, but do expect to pay a lot more for those. But these are quite good if you are going to be doing moving footage, if you do actually want to walk around while you're filming. What next?
Yeah. Can I add my thoughts on lights and camera real quick?
Please.
Of course.
When I record my videos, which has been a while, I just use my phone. And the older your phone is, the more you benefit from good lighting. So definitely don't underestimate the lighting aspect of making videos. Whether you're doing a podcast or shooting footage, lighting is super important. Because the biggest thing that sets cameras apart, whether it's webcams or video cameras, is how good the sensors can make something useful out of low light. So this camera that I'm using it's old. It's very old, but it's not super pixelated because I added some lights in front of me. And these were, I think I paid $20, $30. They are little USB powered light panels with a little diffusion plate in front of it. And it's enough to make this camera not grainy. So lighting really helps. And if you have an old camera, old iPhone, just add more light. The what do you call it? The light balance of the phone will kick in and will make it look better for you. So
Well, I actually use ring lights. A lot of people can use those nowadays, and they actually have them like Bruce was showing where it holds the phone. They actually have those ring lights where it will hold your phone right in the middle of the ring light, and it uses LEDs that you can actually change the diffusion of light, even the color of the light on them. In fact, I'm using a little mini ring light up here above me to shine light down. So, and I have it not set to the maximum, but it's it's enough light just to give me a good video here.
Yep.
So, unless people have other things to add, I was thinking to move on to audio now, or do people have other things they want
we
to
still
talk
got
about?
two things.
I have one thing to add,
Streaming
and that is
software.
not on the list, but it is very, very important. You won't find it here on MacYak because we all have very comfortable ones. But we've had guests in the past that don't have comfortable ones, and you can instantly tell. Have a good chair. And if you are recording standing up, get one of those rubber floor mats. Because if you're not comfortable and you're going to be on camera, trust me, it'll translate to video. So get a comfortable chair when you're podcasting. Have something comfortable to stand on if you're standing up doing stuff. Do your wrist exercises for if you're Sean. Just make sure you're comfortable. It's very important.
There's a tip there that I can recommend. This is if you happen to be doing a YouTube video where you might be wanting to interview someone, do not put them in a swivel chair. I have done recordings in the past where I've been, recording people for, corporate videos and stuff like that. And you plonk a camera down in front of a CEO or something like that, and they start sitting in their chair and they start doing this while they're talking, and it makes for a really bad interview. So if they've got a swivel chair, whip them out of it and put them on a stationary chair.
Is it okay to tape them down?
Yes.
It's time to stop because Dave showed up.
Dave is early. Well, 7 minutes early, but still.
Yeah, I think we get into audio in very in-depth, Bruce, but I think maybe we could tease it for next time and say audio is almost just as important as the video because it may look pretty, but if you can't understand what the person is saying or the audio is very low or very hitting the ceiling of what that microphone could take, it could be a very unpleasant video to watch.
I'm going to tell you one thing to stay away from. One camera combination to stay away from is the Mevo. Do not buy that because I've used that before and the audio on those suck.
Trust me. I'm sure that we've all had experiences where you have gone to watch a YouTube video or something like that, and the sound is just unbearable, and it makes the video unbearable. I mean, it doesn't matter whether what is filmed is perfect. It's exactly what you want to see. If that sound is really bad, you're not going to sit there and watch it. You're not going to persevere. I've had a few videos like that where it's been someone maybe going through a tutorial and they've done a screen capture and they're capturing everything I want to see, but the audio is just awful. And that's it. I'm not going to sit there and watch it. So audio is really, really important. We say a lot of this because we've all been through those trial and errors, as Sean is saying in the chat. We've all had these horrible experiences. I did research like crazy for a camera, and I ended up buying one, and I hated it, and I had to return it. So we've all been through there. Anybody has any questions, leave it in the comment section, not just in the live chat, but on the YouTube video itself, and we could address that in the further series. Yep, that's right. This stuff about equipment, some of the other things we are going to cover, as Steve said, we will go a bit more in depth into audio. We're going to talk about editing software. We're going to talk about live streaming software. So we're going to cover a lot of different things in this. We've obviously run out of time today, but just again, if you have any questions or you want clarification on things, or if you're interested in any of the equipment that we use, by all means, put it in there and we'll answer that and let you know.
Yep. Now, little something different, and this is just revisiting something we talked about, I think, 3 weeks ago, maybe a little bit more, is AirTags. I think we all talked about it when they came out, like we all ordered some, or some of us did, and then we revisited one more time, like, hey, it's been a week, how do we like them? But now that It's been a month, maybe longer.
It's
I
been
don't
a while.
know,
Yeah,
but,
it's been a while.
those of us that have been using AirTags, are we happy with it? Have we found some obvious shortcomings? Have they exploded?
I've had a few. I've had the tiles and the trackers before them. Hands down, I could say they work great. Beats the crap out of those. Have not had a problem of it detecting where the AirTag is or connecting to it in order for it to find it. I lose my keys or misplace my wallet on a seems like a daily basis. Works fine. Highly recommend them. Well worth it.
Yep, I would agree. I've now had mine for just under 2 months. I am the same. I used to have one of these little ones here, and the fantastic thing about these, I don't know how they managed to build this in as a feature, but they never seem to work when you need them. I have found so far every single time I've been in a situation where I've misplaced my wallet or my keys. I have one AirTag in my wallet, one in my keys. My wife has one on her keys and one in her purse, and so far, every time one of these has been misplaced, I press the button to make a noise, and away it goes. So I don't use that location feature as in where it's pointing you towards it. I don't bother with that. Just having it make a noise is enough for me. But my wife did have an instance where she had accidentally put her keys down in a store. And then had sort of a sudden realization later on, oh no, where have I put my keys? Or it might have been a purse, I can't remember, one or the other. And it did allow her to find them because they had actually ended up underneath some stuff in the store. And she was able to, make it. The one complaint she said is she does wish they pinged a little louder. And I would agree with that. They're pretty quiet.
Yeah. Well, my wife has one. I didn't go all in with the 4-pack. I just got one AirTag to test them out. And who better to test them on than my wife, who loses her car keys 85 times a day at the minimum. So while they haven't been lost outside of the house yet, she does use it several times a day to find them inside the house. Oh, I have to leave. Where are my keys? I don't know. If you check the fridge, it's not uncommon for the keys to end up there. And every time she's able to find them. So I think I might get a few more, but so far no shortcomings.
I like what All Things DG just said. He's moving cross country next month, and he's packed 3 of them. And he's going to update whether he can locate them while they move.
Yeah, there's a few videos where people ship packages overseas and stuff, so I'd be very interested to see how he fares with it.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, cool.
I have not bought any.
You will. All
Mike is
that
going to buy
brings
some,
us,
put them on his cats.
I thought about putting one on my cats, but they would probably scratch me to pieces if I try that.
How far do you think one of my cats is going to go in this little ass apartment? Although I have thought about putting one on Prada and letting him go outside just to see how far he goes because he likes to go outside.
You should.
Then he gets hit by a car and you feel bad.
Your AirTags have stopped responding. Uh-oh.
Your AirTag is in the middle of the street.
Your AirTag is going 75 miles per hour.
Oh, that's just cruel. All right. No. I think we should end it on that note before we say something we're going to regret. Is anyone up to anything useful in the next week?
Well, I don't know about useful, but Mike is going to come over and we're going to try and blow some stuff up.
That sounds useful.
And I'm going to Jay's
to blow some stuff up.
And Greg is going to Bruce's.
What?
Yeah. Supposedly.
I guess with all this YouTube money we're making,
Yeah.
I'll get right on that.
Greg will get there in 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
As I said, supposedly Grudy will be with us this weekend as well at Jay's.
Spoiler alert. Rudy, if he shows up, will be bringing a Power Mac G4 and I believe 20-inch iMac with him, and he is planning to take the motorcycle to get here. So that should be very interesting.
You gotta, Jay, the footage of when he arrives in your driveway, you have to preserve that.
Essential.
I have cleaned the security camera. It will be ready to go.
Excellent.
Especially if he wipes out on my driveway. That would be fantastic.
So what day are you guys all getting together?
Well, Saturday morning, I think.
Saturday and Sunday, yeah.
Why? You coming? You gonna tell Steve, nope, I'm going
I'm
to
not
a
driving
better
8
party?
hours the wrong direction. I'd rather drive 3 hours to go see Steve.
Well, fine then.
You're no longer invited.
And I might find an action retro along the way just for shits and giggles.
Mike, why is there some noise coming from your trunk?
Well, I mean, he does live in Philadelphia, and it's not like anybody's going to miss him.
It's a distinct thumping sound. What is that?
I'll just drag him.
Oh,
to
that's
New
just
Jersey.
this whole crazy thing.
Crazy thing.
No, I was
man.
just wondering if you guys were planning on doing any streams or anything like that.
I may
doubt
well
it, but you
try.
never know.
I
Not
didn't
you,
stream
nobody
last
cares
week.
about you, Bruce. I was talking about Dana, Jay, and
I'm in lockdown. I got no choice but to stream.
and Greg.
I doubt it.
Well, see, you guys got to make a trip down here, or we got to meet somewhere close, or maybe in the
We're
middle of all
working
three
on
of us. Yeah.
Between the three of us, we can probably come up with some harebrained idea that maybe 5 people would watch. So
Yeah.
you know,
5 people.
Just please do it in my time zone, please.
Well, if it involves
Yeah.
fire, I'm sure multiple people would be happy to watch it.
What time you wake up, Bruce?
On the weekend.
Exactly.
Whenever he wants.
if we do anything, it'll be late Saturday night for us. So it'll be.
Oh, okay.
That'd be perfect for me. That'd be perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All
you'll
I can
catch
say
theirs.
is, stay tuned this weekend. Crazy stuff might happen. That's all I
Maybe.
can say.
Exciting.
Yeah, I'm not saying
I mean-
that Steve and I are going to stream, but just in case, you know.
Well, I mean, people have to be witness to what comes on fire from this, whatever the heck we're doing.
We got StreamYard. You guys can dial in from over there. We can dial in from here.
Yeah.
Make it a stream party.
Absolutely.
MacYak live. Oh wait, we're
Me,
already
me
live.
and Bruce will be by ourselves.
You can dial in too.
No doubt.
Now, I have a quick question before I wrap this up. Earlier this week on Monday, I believe, or Tuesday, Monday, we uploaded our first Tech Talk video. I don't know if everybody has seen it, but we would welcome some feedback.
Not TikTok, Tech Talk.
Tech Talk, yes.
TikTok.
You will not find us on TikTok
New.
doing dancing
No.
videos. I mean, you might find Mike dancing on TikTok.
And
but
that's something we might start doing a little bit more often, instead of waiting the whole week to come back, release little clips here and there, sprinkle them in. So make sure you leave some feedback under that video or on Discord so we know if you liked it or if we should never do it again. Just let us know. So, anyone have anything else to add before I wrap this up? I'll take that as a no. In that
Well,
case,
Trina said, "What about an only Mac fans page?"
ain't nobody wanting to see that.
Have you seen us?
I can't promise anything, but
Hey, I got something to add real quick.
Yes.
Smash that like button.
There we go.
Yay.
I had to get it in there at least once tonight.
Yes.
okay. Well, smash the like button, subscribe. If you're new here, thank you for showing up. If you've been here for a while, thank you for being crazy enough to return, and I hope you keep doing it. And with that said, I'm going to ask one of these other dudes to handle
we
the
have- we
outro
have
and
to
the
do the-
overlay.
Discord.
Well, everybody knows we're on Discord.
All right, go to Discord.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
going home.
Our Discord
Bye.
link should be in the video description.
Is it?
I thought. No, it's not.
You'll find out when you check the description.
It's not there. Someone took it away.
Dave commands it, so we have to end the show.
Oh, yeah.
But thank you everybody for joining us.
So,